Welcome to your video tutorial on the Iceberg Model. Before we go into the Iceberg Model, I want you to just understand a little bit about why we're teaching you this framework. It's not an official, framework like the GROW model, which was pioneered by John Whitmore, in the respect that it's got a name attached to it and it's an official one, but it's a good, let's call it a metaphor for understanding how the mind works. And because that's what we do as coaches, we work predominantly with the mind. We need to understand its dynamic, its function. And Carl Jung helped us to sort of understand the different layers to the mind through this quote where he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Essentially what Carl Jung, sorry, I think I might have said Carl Rogers, but it's actually Carl Jung quote this. He was a bit like Freud. He engaged in psychoanalysis, which was matters of the subconscious mind and how to change those in order to create the behaviour and results we want. And essentially in that quote, what Carl Jung is saying is we have an unconscious mind, which is at the bottom, and the Iceberg model will help you to visualize this in a little while, and a conscious mind, which is at the top. So the conscious mind is what we're aware of, and the unconscious is what we're not aware of, until we start doing the thought work like coaching or counselling or other similar interventions. And what we tend to do as humans is go around our lives, and whatever happens in terms of the behaviours and the results, we call it fate. So you might hear people say, oh, that's just how it is, or it was meant to be, or, you know, that's just how it is, or that's just how I am. And really what we're saying there is I am not aware of my unconscious mind. I'm not aware that actually some of the behaviour and results that have been created in the world are because of deep-seated values and beliefs in my subconscious mind or unconscious mind. You might hear the phrases used alternately depending on the psychologist, but subconscious, unconscious, I'm talking about the same thing here. And people go around and say because that's just the way it is, it's out of their control. But actually when we do the thought work through coaching and we slow the brain down and we challenge it and we probe it and we create the conditions of unconditional positive regard and non-judgment, we're actually able to pull out from the unconscious mind some beliefs that are limiting, some values that are limiting. And when we see that, we're then able to change them, which ultimately changes our behaviours and results. It's a long process. It's a long-term process, and it needs maintaining and sustaining this kind of work, because you might go back to old habits, but also you've probably got a series, as we all do, of limiting beliefs that we need to keep revealing to ourselves. So this quote is really important because it highlights that as coaches, we need to listen out for where our coachees are saying, maybe not using this language, but along the lines of, that's just how I am. That's just how it is. That should invite you as a coach to start using questions to reveal what's going on in the unconscious mind that's making them think that another way isn't possible. So here we have a diagram of the Iceberg model, and hopefully this visual helps you to understand the dynamics of the mind in a little bit more detail and with further clarity. So you've probably heard the phrase tip of the iceberg, and that's exactly what the mind is we've got the mind represented here as an iceberg. And the tip of the iceberg, if you think about it, if you're seeing that from sea level, maybe you're on a boat or you're on land, you can only see the tip of the iceberg. That's all that is observable, right? And that links to our own results and behaviours. The outcomes we produce are habits. So for example, say you were always late to work. You can see within a working week, you've been late to work maybe 4 out of 5 days. And you know that every morning you wake up on time, but you can observe that it takes you longer than expected to wash, dress, organise your lunch, and you can observe all these results and behaviours that they're very sort of observable to you. The results are that you're not getting to work on time, and these are things that you can see and you can identify and you're conscious about them. However, no matter how much you've tried, you still keep getting the same behaviours and results because all you're doing is observing the observable. What you need to do if you have a habit that needs changing is you need to go down into the subconscious mind. So that's where our invisible thinking takes place. So emotions, thoughts, what we think, what we feel. Right down at the bottom is even less obvious, more invisible, values, beliefs. And it's these that are very discreet, entrenched, perhaps come from childhood conditioning, and are often invisible to the conscious mind. It takes time to identify them and then to change them. But the iceberg model presents this idea that whatever the results and the behaviours are, they are driven by emotions, thinking, values and beliefs. And if you want to support a coachee to change the results and behaviours that they're bringing to a session, then you have to be skilled at a coach to challenge the emotions, the thinking, the values and beliefs. But before you even challenge them, you need to help a coachee decide what they are. To help you to do that, a little bit of an exercise for you before we move on. Around the iceberg, you can see that there's some phrases. And these are some phrases that I want you to imagine a coachee has said in a session. And your job as a coach is to be able to go, right, my coachee has said X. At what level of the iceberg are they talking to me from here? So, for example, I avoid my boss because he doesn't like me. Are they talking about results and behaviours, emotions and thinking, values and beliefs? Or is it a bit of both? Are they talking from more than one level? You decide. It's important for my boss to like me. Again, what level of the iceberg are they talking from? Results, behaviours, emotions, thinking, values, beliefs. Look at the third phrase. I feel sick every time I get an email from my boss. Are they talking to you from the results, behaviours, emotions, thinking, values and beliefs? Which one? More than one? That's okay. And the last one, I know you can't see that very well because my face is covering it, but I'm going to read it out to you so you can write it down if you want. The last one is respect is important to me. Respect is important to me. Are they talking to you from results, behaviours, emotions, thinking, values or beliefs? I'd like you to pause the video here and I want you to write those phrases out on a piece of paper in front of you. And next to those phrases, I would like you to write down at what level of the iceberg do you think they're talking to you from? Once you've done that, restart the video and we'll go through the answers together. So you should have now paused the video and we're going to go through the answers together, which hopefully you've had time to think about. So the first one, I avoid my boss because he doesn't like me. Okay, so for this one, so just to repeat the first one, I avoid my boss because he doesn't like me. What we should have done there is identified this here, avoiding the boss is a observable behaviour. So this is an observable behaviour. However, the observable behaviour we're identifying here, he doesn't like me, that is a thought, isn't it? So that there we would identify as something down into the subconscious mind, in the semi-conscious, because there is some awareness there, and that thinking is driving the behavior. So there is some awareness there of what is driving the behavior that you could do some work with on your coachee. And we're going to obviously develop how you do that through Masterclass 2 onwards, on particularly questioning those kind of thoughts, especially if those behaviours like avoidance are not serving the coachee. So that's what you should have come up with for that one. This one, it's important for my boss to like me. Now, whenever you're hearing a coachee talk about what's important to them, that's good, because it shows that they're aware of their values and beliefs. Whether they're helpful or not, there is an awareness there, isn't there, of those values and beliefs, and they can be challenged if they're not serving them. Anything that's important to someone is a value, isn't it? So that's what you should have identified as that one. I feel sick every time I get an email. So there's two dynamics going on here. I feel sick is an emotion. It's a bit like a behaviour as well, isn't it? So I can see why you might have identified it as a behaviour, but it's more of an emotion, because it's a feeling, isn't it? Almost like a feeling of dread. Every time they get an email from their boss. So that's the behaviour that's triggering the emotion there. And there's lots of opportunity for a coach to pick that apart with a coachee by asking questions about perhaps the story that's being told when they see the email come up, and why is that story being generated that's triggering that sick to the stomach feeling. What perhaps are they not aware of here in the values and beliefs, or the thinking that they need to change, so that they'll look at that email coming in differently. And this one, respect is important to me. So remember, like the other one here, respect is a value, because it's seen as something that's important to the coachee. So there's an awareness there, isn't there, from your coachee, that respect is a core value, which shows some self-awareness. Now, a self-aware coachee might speak to you from the top, from the observable results and behaviours, and might quite quickly be able to get to the bottom, to the subconscious, because there is that self-awareness. But sometimes it might, if they don't have that self-awareness, take a wider range of tools, more skillful tools, a longer period of time, to try and get to the bottom of the iceberg. Because remember, just going to the behaviors and results, identifying what they don't want, and then trying to find out what they do want before you find out what's driving them isn't going to lead to long-term sustained change, because the subconscious is the most entrenched and powerful, and that will always override the behaviors and results that the coachee wants if you don't challenge and address those and change them into more enabling ones and give them the tools to identify when the old ones are coming up. So this is a great metaphor for you to start with in your coaching journey. It's a great metaphor to start thinking about your own mind and its dynamics, and use this as a reflection tool for yourself. If you're creating behaviors and results that you don't want, you can use the coaching tools we teach you to almost self-coach yourself around the subconscious mind, and try and identify what's stopping you from creating the behavior and results you want. Because if you can apply this to yourself, it will help you to support your coachees when you use it with them. It's not necessarily something that you need to share visually with your coachees. It's not even something you need to refer to in a session. For example, you might not even need to say, I've got a tool called the Iceberg Model. This is just something that I want you to sit with and inform your questioning. However, I have now and again pulled this up if there was a real lack of self-awareness, to help coachees understand how their mind works and to really develop that self-awareness. I have used it as a visual to say, can I share a diagram with you which might help you to understand your thinking process? That would be okay, but not always necessary, and you'd use your professional judgment to decide if to do that would be helpful. Sometimes the cons of that is if it slows, getting the diagram up, it slows down the coaching process. It sort of stalls the thinking. It creates a lull in the session, especially if you're not prepared and you're trying to find it on your computer or in your folder if you're doing live in-person coaching. So there's lots to consider there. It's important that you have made some notes on this and you understand it, and you take it into certainly your masterclass 2 as a starting point to help inform your questions.